This is Lynn Fraser with the Kiloby Center for Recovery and the Radical Recovery Summit, and I'm so happy to be here today with Justin Michael Williams, a songwriter, singer, and a meditation teacher, a yoga meditation teacher. So we have a lot in common in not the singer and songwriter part, but certainly in the meditation part. And with the Radical Recovery Summit, I really like to get a wide range of people that are working maybe not directly in the field of addiction, but in all of the underlying things that lead people into addiction. And so that's one of the reasons why I thought it would be really interesting to get your view on this and how it is that you're working with people. And I've got lots of things that I want to bring in terms of the big dreams and the stay woke in your book and all of that. So why don't we start with just saying welcome to be here, and what would you like to say, and how would you like to get started about how you got to where you are, how you got from your childhood to here?
Wow. Well, Lynn, I just want to say thank you for having me. As we got a chance to just briefly talk about before we started, this is a really big topic for me and a place that I love doing work. There's a lot of addiction and a lot of beautiful recovery in my family,
Mhm.
directly with so many members of my family, and so I have a lot of direct experience with this, including my own experiences with a substance and different forms of addiction in my life. And so I think the reason why I share that right up top is, as it comes to how I got here, I think there's a lot that can be said. But for me, I grew up quite literally in a home with gunshot holes on the outside of my house, and with domestic violence and with trauma. And what's interesting is, right now, as I'm doing this interview, I'm home with my family, not in the same house,
Oh,
for the holidays. So this is not my normal background. I'm
okay.
actually at my sister's house,
Mhm.
and when you grow up with any kind of trauma and conditioning, no matter how much money you grew up with or how good of a family you grew up with, we all have our stuff, right? And we learn to adapt to that. All of us do. And I think my adaptation was an adaptation that on the outside looks healthy, but has
Uh,
a big shadow. And some
mhm.
people's adaptation is directly to go into what looks like trouble. But
Mm.
my adaptation was to become what I've been calling, and what I call in my book, a chronic overachiever.
Right.
And when you're that chronic overachiever, what happens? Your self worth gets completely entangled with
Mm.
your achievements and your validation. And we don't know who we are and what we're worth outside of what we do and what we produce and what we accomplish. And then when you strip that away, then what's left? And so, for me, I always said, like, I was the best overachiever. I I accomplished everything on the list, like growing up in this environment, and my siblings were not the same, but I
Mhm.
graduated the top of my class. I got a full ride academic scholarship to go to UCLA. I was class president. I got into the most impacted major. I went to college. I came out of the closet. I had this moment where I got to college at UCLA having more money than I've ever had in my life from scholarships, living free. And I said, my life looks exactly how I've always imagined on the outside.
Mhm.
But then there was this big moment sitting on my dorm room floor when I was 19 years old, and I was struggling with an eating disorder at the time. And I said, how is it that my life looks exactly how I've always dreamed of on the outside, and I'm still miserable? I'm still
Mm.
not happy. I'm still not happy. And I think
Mhm.
we all have these experiences which
Mhm.
drive us to do different things, where we've tried to change the things on the outside, right? We've
Right.
tried to change all the things: the job, the hair, the car, the dating, the person, the city, the whatever. And I love, one of my friends, who's become a friend now on this path, my soul brother, John Kabat-Zinn, he says, wherever you go, you are.
There you are.
And there
Mhm.
you are, and so I tell that story because the way that I got from being boy who grew up in a home with gunshot holes outside of his house through this crazy path of overachiever, and then my own forms of addiction and self-harm, into being in a space where now I have the blessing, really the honor, of getting to travel and speak and teach. And I mean, not much travel happening now, but traveling over Zoom,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
40 countries around the world, and being able to help empower people to step beyond their limiting beliefs and into their dreams is because I had to go through this deep journey myself, you
right.
know, really of understanding, okay, I went to a therapist when I was 19, and he said to me, "Hey, kid, it looks like you're trying to find all your happiness outside of yourself. Have you ever tried finding it within?" And me at 19, this is 15, 16 years ago. And I'm looking and I'm at him and I'm like, within? Like, what are you talking about? Like, where? Like, I don't know. I
Where?
knew that there's like a God out there and then there's me. And so, what is this happiness within? And that question is what like set me on this journey of becoming what I think is like a self-help junkie, is what I've become now.
Yeah, I think I would probably qualify for that too.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
just, like you're doing, Lynn, it's just, and then just being excited to share with other people what I think actually
Mhm.
works. That's
Right.
the piece of, I think, what I teach and what I hope to accomplish even today with everybody listening and in
Mhm.
all of my work is I think there are lots of conversations about change, but very few conversations that actually change something. And so I feel like my role or what I'd like to do is get us into conversations that can actually help us change something in a tactical, practical way. So
Right.
that's the
So
cliff.
that yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. So you're 19 years old, you're wondering where this elusive happiness is gonna be found. So what are you and I've read your book, Stay Woke, and it's a beautiful book and so much practical application in there. So I get what you mean when you're talking about how can we really change.
Yeah,
So you've come through this really traumatic childhood
yeah.
with violence and addiction, and then you get to this point where you've discovered that overachieving isn't really actually healing. So what happened then? What was your process then?
So back then, this process of realizing that it wasn't working, that is the part that at first, before I started to find my pathway into practice, is what kind of set me into a depression of sorts. And
Okay.
I got, an eating disorder, which in high school, so in college, I mean, right now, you can never tell on Zoom, but I'm about 6 feet tall. I'm really 5'11", but my hair gives me an inch or two. and and I weigh about 160 pounds, maybe 165 after the holiday.
Mhm.
And then in my freshman year of college, I weighed 115,
Oh.
115 pounds.
Mm,
Um, I was really tiny and still thought I was overweight. And I think it was just because I was trying to find something like, what's wrong? There must be something wrong that like I haven't fixed. And
mhm,
still looking outside, looking at my physical body. And what happened that changed everything for me is I was told to try this thing called meditation. Now you have to remember, like when this happened, like I knew meditation was around, but like Oprah hadn't done a meditation challenge. I didn't know any black people meditating. I never even heard of that. It just was
yeah,
like this foreign concept to me at 19, not like it is now for kids. And
mhm.
I look at the therapist who recommended that to me, and I literally said, "Meta what?" I was like, "Isn't that worshiping the devil? What is that? I don't know about that."
Uh-huh.
And I tried it a few times and I hated it. I thought it was so stupid. I could not fathom how anybody was sitting there looking at these candle flames for an hour. Like I just was so confused and I just felt like I was doing it wrong. So I gave up.
Mhm.
And then one night I went to this party. This is actually not in Stay Woke. And it was one of the things, the stories that had to get cut just for word count, but it's one of my favorite stories. And so I go to this party and I sit down next to this older gentleman. Now I'm in my early 20s, and this older gentleman sits next to me and he leans into me and he goes, "Hey, young man, how was your day?" So just give you the picture. I'm like freshly out of the closet, like 20 years old. Like I
Yeah.
had my hair in like a ponytail. I think my eyebrows were done. I was wearing like a hot pink shirt. And like this is like a late 60s older white guy in like cargo shorts, and like
Okay.
I think a coexist t-shirt he might have been wearing at the time. And when they had like all the little logos or
All the
whatever.
symbols. Yeah.
Yeah, all the symbols. And so he leans in, "How was your day?" And I said, "Oh, it was okay." I said, "I went to this meditation thing, but I hated it." And I lean into him and I said, "Have you ever heard about meditation?" Little did I know, I'm sitting next to one of the world's most renowned meditation teachers and scholars, Sanskrit scholars named Lauren Roche.
Uh-huh.
And can you just imagine my little ass like, "Have you ever heard about meditation?" you know? And he goes, "Well, I have actually." And so he
Yeah.
starts asking me questions. He didn't tell me he was a teacher.
Mhm.
He just starts asking me questions. Why? And I start telling him about how I grew up and telling him about this happiness within and telling him about my trauma. And he rips off a piece of paper and writes his phone number down on it and says, "All right, kid, here's my number. If you want to learn to meditate, meet me at the beach at the end of Ocean Park Boulevard in Santa Monica tomorrow at 9:45." And I was like, "Well, I have class at 9:45. Can we do another time?" And he goes, "Can we do 10:45?" I said, "Okay." So I get his number. And to be honest with you, I thought he was trying to pick me up. I didn't know what was going on. I said, "Meet you at the beach. I'm not sure, because I didn't know he was a teacher." And so
Right.
after that happened, I went to one of my friends and told her what happened. And she goes, "Oh my God, do you know who that is? Like, he wrote Meditation Made Easy. He wrote the Radiant Sutras. He wrote these incredible books. You should go. He charges all this money to go. Go." So I
Mhm.
go. And the practice that I did with him that day, which is a similar practice I'm going to do with you all today, changed the trajectory of my whole life. It was one of those moments where you go, my life after that and before that were two completely different things. So I
Mhm.
sit down with him and I do this practice. And for the first time ever, I felt like I was somebody who was actually meditating, not someone who was trying to meditate. And
Mm.
for the first time ever, I felt like I actually felt a future where my possibilities were bigger than my circumstances. And for a
Mhm.
boy growing up how I grew up, and for those of us who have dealt with addiction or all the things that we're dealing with, like to see a future where possibility is bigger than the circumstance is a big deal, you
Yeah.
know? And so the end of that story I'll just share is I finished the practice and Lauren says to me, "All right, kid, I want you to try this every day for 2 weeks. And I want you to check in with me every single day.
Mhm.
And if you feel like this works for you, I'll teach you everything I know." And I look at him and I was like, "Why?" Like, I'm still thinking, what does this guy want? And I'll
Right.
never forget these words that he said. He said, "In all my 40 years of teaching, I've never come across somebody who looks like you and who's gone through what you've gone through, who's been interested in this practice. And one day, I think there are going to be people who need to hear your voice who don't need to hear mine."
That's
And
beautiful.
I said, I think I was a stupid kid. So I was like, "No pressure," or something stupid like that. But the rest is history. I ended up apprenticing with him for 3 years, traveling, speaking, teaching. And then the moment came, for my voice to be shared. And that's led to, the work that I'm doing right now.
Mhm. Mhm. So one of the things you talk about is the effect of trauma as being that where all of our dreams are going towards security and safety and not going into a life that we actually might want to have. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So when we grow up with any form of trauma, this is so interesting. I was just talking about this with a friend last night. Okay, I'll give it with this example. So oftentimes, our traumas create this drive in us to sometimes get away from it. So like growing up in a home with gunshot holes outside my house and growing up poor and growing up with domestic violence, like my only dream as a kid was like, I'm going to get out. Like, I'm going to get away from here. I'm going to be successful. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to do this and do that. And so we create this dynamic where here's our past, here's our pain, here's our trauma, and we're just running from it. We're getting
Yeah.
as far away from it as we can. And what we don't recognize is in all that running, this is still running the show.
Right.
This is still what's in control,
Mhm.
right? And so it's so hard to face at that moment. Like we think about people who say stuff like this, like, oh, when I was a kid, I never had nice shoes. And so now I get all the nice shoes that I want and I buy all these nice shoes. Okay. So the trauma of not having the nice shoes is still affecting your life and controlling your outcomes and your choices now. It's not that, oh, now you're in a better spot. It's just now you have more money and so you're showing up to this trauma differently. Am I
Mhm.
making sense right now? You're
Absolutely.
tracking
Yeah.
me? So
Mhm.
it's a really tricky thing to look at. And so what I tell people, and it's hard and it takes resilience, but I know everybody listening here has the capacity to do this, is what we actually have to do after we've done all this running is turn around and face it. And
Yes.
what are you here to show me? How can I heal this? How can I do it? Because when we merge with it, when we merge with that childhood version of ourself or that younger version of ourself that needs love and needs care, when we merge with it, we can't be there for it
Mhm.
because we've become it.
Right.
And the only way to be there for it is to be with it. And so the two ways that we often approach this is we're either running as far away from it as we can, which is not being there for ourselves, or we
Mhm.
merge completely with it and we can't see the difference between us and it anymore. And that
Right.
still is there's still two unhealthy forms of attachment. So
Mhm.
how do we stand with it to learn what it is that needs to be healed in us so that we can find the real dream for our life, the real mission that's coming up for you, that's not a response or a reaction
Right.
to your trauma only, only. So,
Mm.
yeah.
So so your life took a big turn. Now, did you work directly with the trauma, feeling what was going on, staying present with that? Did you, what was your process like around that? Do you feel like people need to go in and feel some of those really difficult um, feelings and the terror and the distress?
Yeah,
Or, yeah,
I do.
experience
And
too.
and
Mm.
I avoided it so bad. Like I became for a while, for a long while, one of the people who just was all about love and light. Like if I just think
Mhm.
positive, if I just keep thinking positive, I listen to the podcast, I read the books, I do my prayers, I do the this, then like I don't need to face that stuff,
Right.
like I'm beyond that stuff.
Mhm.
And then one of my teachers, her name's Sienna Sherman, one day she said to me, she was encouraging me to do, and I was doing therapy, I was doing that, but she was encouraging me to dive deeper and
Mhm.
go into doing what's called shadow work, which I weave a little bit of it into the book, but without calling it that, And
Yeah.
um, shadow work, for people who are going, what's that? It's the things that are controlling your life from the background without you realizing it. So it's
Right.
the example of now you're buying all the nice shoes and you think that means that you've overcome your thing, but actually that trauma is still controlling you. It's
Yeah.
another way of thinking of it is the puppet strings. Like it's the puppet
Mhm.
master that's controlling the strings. And so when we do shadow work, we cut the strings and we gain our freedom. And um, I'll say this. So the difference between like traditional therapy, which I'm not saying is bad, I do traditional therapy still, and shadow work is one of the ways traditional Western therapy is built is similar to all other Western medicine. Like it's often treating the symptom. And
Right.
so you come to therapy with what? You come to your therapist and you tell them what you're aware of as a problem. But what shadow work is working on is what's not in your awareness that's creating all these damn problems in the first place.
Right,
You
exactly.
know? And
Yep.
so that's the difference. And so I was avoiding it. And one of my teachers said, Justin, the bigger the light, the bigger the shadow it casts. And I went, shit, I probably have a big shadow. You know?
Yeah, yeah,
We
exactly.
all and we all do. And so yes, and yes, you need to face it,
Mhm,
and you can't do it alone, fully alone. You
mhm,
know, certain things you can do alone, and certain things you need some support.
mhm,
And I need support. Like I can't even with all the capacity and stuff that I have, I can't even do it all alone sometimes, many
mhm,
times. And so
mhm,
what I tell people is when you feel like you're stuck and you're hitting a roadblock, you're not wrong. Nothing's wrong with you. You haven't done anything bad. You just need some support to get you through. And that support now, luckily, in the way that we're living today, it's so available.
oh,
It,
absolutely.
it's
Mhm,
more available than it's ever been before. And summits like you're doing, Lynn, and podcasts and books and group coaching and uh, group therapy and there's so many things. Um,
mhm,
so anyway, I think in I'll close this section by saying when we turn toward our pain instead of running away from it. And I know we have to do the running away first. It feels like almost what's required first. We have to
mhm,
run away. And that even sometimes is helpful because it gives us a distance to see it. And so, but when you
mhm,
turn back toward it, that's when you can look at it as, this pain is actually a flag. It's an indicator. It's a marker in the ground that's showing me this is where I need to grow. This is where I
right,
need to learn. And when you learn and grow in those areas, that's when your life, it just unlocks. The
mhm,
cycles stop. And yeah, anyway, I can go on and on about that part, but
mhm.
I'll stop.
Well, and I'm trying to think of the direction to go from here because there's so many places we could go with this. But let's go with community for a minute and not doing this alone and go into social justice, racial inequality. You talk about that as well, and how the intergenerational standing on the shoulders of people that have come before, and that this is the time now that we need to take this seriously and do this work.
Yeah.
So maybe you could just expand on that a little bit.
We're in a really fascinating time in history right now.
Mhm,
Fascinating.
mhm,
And what's so fascinating about it is, and I've talked to a lot of mentors and friends who were very active and around in the classical civil rights era, in the
mhm,
1960s in the US. And they all say, this does not feel like that. This is
mhm,
different. This is something completely different. And the reason for that is we are the first generation, and by we I mean all of us here together on the planet right now. Like we're the first generation with the opportunity to even do this work at the level that we are doing it. This is
mhm,
the first time in history there's New York Times best-selling books about race
mhm,
on the list for 5 months straight.
mhm,
And entire research institutions and programs and all the things that we have in social media to have this discussion at the level that we're having it. And so what I say is this is our responsibility to be what Layla Saad so beautifully calls a good ancestor.
mhm,
This is our chance to be a good ancestor and to come together because our ancestors, all of our ancestors, like most of them didn't have the opportunity to think about mental health and manifesting and life purpose and
mhm,
no, none of that stuff. Like just trying to survive, just trying to create the possibility for the future generation. And guess what? We are that generation. Like
right,
we
mhm,
are. And so I think a lot about this word liberation. I have a program that I've just got done hosting and that will be happening again in 2021 called the Liberation Experience, really uniting and bringing people together across divides to learn how to have these conversations and come together in community for people who really believe in the possibility of coming together and creating change and uniting. And when we first start the program, the liberation experience, we talk about this word liberation and what does it mean? Because it's a word that gets thrown around a lot these days.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And liberation, if you look it up in the Oxford Dictionary, means both becoming free and setting free. And
Oh,
so it's fascinating when we think about it that way because we think so much about our personal liberation, our personal growth, our personal
mhm,
self. But the impact that that has, if we look at like an infinity symbol, on our possibility for setting others free is
mhm,
humongous. And this sounds very theoretical, but just in a very practical way. One of my favorite quotes is from a woman named Sheila Marie, and it says, "What doesn't heal repeats. What
mhm.
doesn't heal repeats." It
Yeah.
just keeps going. It's going to keep going in your life in cycles and cycles and cycles with a different person, a different boss, a different partner, a different something. And if you
Mhm,
don't heal it, guess who gets to heal it? Your kids, your family, your this. It just keeps going. And this is
mhm,
the same for recovery and addiction, right? Like my grandfather was in recovery,
mhm,
my dad was in recovery. I now personally have not been in recovery, but I say I practice sobriety because I've worked on, okay, what is this part of my personality? I know it's coming. My dad and my grandpa have done this work. We've gotten to have deep talks about it. And I
mhm,
don't drink. I just don't. I have had four years now, no alcohol by choice, not from recovery. And I'm not saying that recovery or not, I'm not placing any
mhm,
judgment on that. But,
mhm,
but what I'm saying is I get to have a completely different relationship with it because
mhm.
of the work that was done for the generations before me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so the work that you are all doing is setting up what's coming in the future.
Mhm, mhm.
So that's
Yeah.
anyway, you got
Mhm.
it.
Well, and one of the things that comes to mind is, I was doing your meditation, but as a lesbian in feminist and really activist in the 70s and 80s, I look at my life now, and one of the things that occurred to me is I'm not as much of an activist as I used to be.
Mhm.
And but when I really look at it, what I'm doing is helping people heal from their trauma, and that's also a form of activism. Because I was feeling kinda like, well, what happened to all that fire from when I was this young person who was just on fire for justice? And I'm still on fire for it, but it's just in a different format, a different way. But
Yeah.
something that I think is really important to circle back to what you were just saying is, 50 years ago, 30, 20, even 10 years ago, not very many people knew the word trauma and what that meant. We didn't know about the nervous system. Stephen Porges is gonna be coming on the summit to talk about the polyvagal system. And his work and the work of so many people that have been doing this is really is really transforming people's experience in it is okay to come and be with what's difficult. And we have all kinds of examples now of that.
Well, yes. And one thing that you're saying, Lynn, that feels really important to me is what you're doing is deep activism
Mhm. Mhm.
because and it's deep liberation, which I think is really important because I tell people I consider myself like an inner activist. And
Mm.
when people first hear me say that, what happens to a lot of my friends who are like in the classical activist community is they roll their eyes and they think, okay, what do you do? Because I'm not somebody who is best used protesting or marching. Like I'll go, but like organizing that is not any use of my skills. It's not using any of my skill sets. And so the reason why the inner activism part is so important and what you're doing is so important and this work that we're all doing, everybody who's here is important, is because if we don't do the internal work that it takes to actually change the external circumstances, then all the external work we're doing will never have the impact that we want it to have. And
Yes,
it
that's so
sounds, it's like we can use every hashtag in the books. We could Black Lives Matter. We can defund the police. We can elect a new president, which we just did. We can do all this kind of stuff. But if we haven't changed within, we're just
mhm.
going to end up rebuilding the same thing.
Yeah,
It's the only thing we could possibly do. Because what is a nation? But Marianne Williamson says this: what is a nation but a collection of individuals?
right.
And so we have to change internally first. And not saying change first. First, it's probably a wrong word. What we need to do is our external work needs to be met and matched with the
Yes.
same level of internal work. Not because the external work and the protesting and the marching and the systemic, all that doesn't matter, but because it matters so much that we
Mm,
have to do the internal work so that it can last.
right. Yeah.
And so I just want to add one more piece onto this, if that's okay, because I think,
Mhm.
this sounds for a lot of people, they're like, okay, sure. But to thread this through, and I think this threads our conversation so beautifully, how many people listening have been in a relationship with somebody, whether it's romantic or not, got out of that relationship because you realized it wasn't right for you,
Mhm.
then got into a new relationship with a completely different person, and soon realized you're in the same relationship, but with a different person with a different name. Same problems, same conversation, same stuff. That's because you haven't changed within to show
Mhm.
up for any relationship differently.
Mhm.
And so you're going to keep creating the same relationship. And that goes with your relationship with people, your relationship with your body, with your job, with your creativity, with your money, and with social justice.
Mhm.
And so this is for me why I say that I'm doing the internal part of the activism so that the people who are doing the external part can have like so much more force and power with what they're doing. And that's
Right.
what you're doing. So
Yeah, that's so that seems like a good lead up to a guided meditation. Do you wanna
yes,
do that now?
sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, all right. So we're going to do a practice that's very similar to the practice that I did on the beach that day with Lauren. I always love guiding people through this. And I call this practice the dream bigger meditation. And what I'll invite you to do as we do this practice is to first get very comfortable. So, however you're sitting, just see if you can get like 5% more comfortable than you are now. So, just like chill. I'm just going to actually kind of sit back a little bit. And if you hear any noises, the neighbors have a dog, something, if you hear anything, just it's not bothering me. Try not to let it bother you. Just welcome it in, even in your own space. And I always think of it like every time I'm going to lead a meditation and somebody's dog starts barking, I'm like, isn't that how life works? Right. Right when we think we're going to get calm. Now, here we go. Start by sitting. And I want everybody to start with their eyes open and find something in the space that you're in, not the screen preferably, but something in the space that you're in to look directly at. And just, it could be a spot on the wall. It doesn't have to be a special spot, but I want you to focus your eyes on one point in your space that you're in your room. And try to look at this spot without moving your eyes, and then place your hands over your heart, one over the other. Take a deep breath in, looking at this space, and a deep breath out. And now, looking straight at this point without moving your eyes, I want you to start to expand your peripheral awareness. So notice how, without moving your eyes, notice how far to the right of you you can see without moving your eyes from this point to the best of your ability. And then notice how far to the left of you you can see without moving your eyes. And notice how far above and below you you can see, all without moving your eyes, and just start to feel the expansiveness. Take in as many colors and textures and shadows and patterns of light that you might be able to find. And just notice the expansiveness here. And notice what we're doing with our eyes right now, focusing on a point and welcoming in the expansiveness, the diversity of our space. What we're doing with our eyes is the same thing you're invited to do with your mind when you meditate. You focus on a spot or a point with gentle awareness. And then you welcome in the diversity and the colors and the textures of your internal landscape, your emotions, your thoughts, feelings, sensations. So you know how to do this. It's just a great metaphor to remind us of the spaciousness that we want to invite into our minds as we practice. So, with that in mind, take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. And then, if you feel comfortable, I invite you to close your eyes when you feel ready. And if you choose to keep them open, that's fine too. Just keep like a soft gaze with your eyes blurred out a little bit so you don't get distracted. And see if you can soften into your body just 5% more. And I'm going to invite you now into a short visualization with me. And I want you to remember as you visualize that some of us visualize with images, meaning we see pictures or movies in our minds, but some of us don't see that clearly at all when we imagine. Some of us visualize with sight, some of us visualize with sound, hearing things, some of us visualize with smell. Some of us visualize or imagine with taste or even with emotion or physical sensation, feeling kinesthetically in our bodies. So when I say imagine an ocean, you might see the ocean, but you might not see it at all. You might feel the temperature of the waves. And so as I'm guiding you through this process, know that if I'm telling you to see something or hear something, if you don't see it or you don't hear it, you're not doing it wrong. Don't force it. Just notice what you do notice. There's no way to do this wrong. Let's begin. On the count of 3, I want you to exhale everything out of your system through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Exhale everything out and come to completely empty. Now, to my count of 3, inhale for 1, 2, 3. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Exhale 1, 2, 3. Again, deeper this time. Inhale 1, 2, 3. Hold for 1, 2, 3. Exhale 1, 2, 3. Great. One more time. Inhale deeply. 1, 2, deeper. 3. Hold this one a little bit longer. See if you can sip in a little bit more air, breathing all the way up into your collarbone and your throat and your jawline. And then as slowly and softly as you can, let it all out. As quietly as possible and slowly as possible, let it all go. And now we're going to visualize, and you can just breathe normally now. I want you to imagine a future version of yourself who is living the life of your dreams. You have the body you've always wanted, you're in the house you've always wanted, you have the money you've always wanted, you're in the relationships you've always wanted, your creativity is the way you've always wanted. Everything is exactly as you've always wanted and dreamed of. And if that feels impossible, good. Because if we can't think beyond our current circumstances, we'll never be able to live beyond them. So let yourself just go there with me. You can rub a magic lamp, all circumstances surmounted. What do you notice? And you might have multiple images kind of shuffling in front of your mind or feel a little unsettled in it. Just see if you can let one thing pop up to the surface, trusting whatever you see. And let's dimensionalize this a little bit. So I want you to notice in this vision as you look at this future you, are you indoor or are you outdoor in the vision? What is this future you wearing? What colors do you see? And what's happening in the environment around you that indicates to you that you're living the life of your dreams? Do you hear anything? Do you taste anything? Do you smell anything? Do you feel anything on your skin, the future you? Maybe a temperature or clothing or anything touching you? And is there an emotional quality that you can tap into? How does this future you feel to be living the life of your dreams? Is there anybody there with you? Or are you alone? And now I'm going to ask you a question. And I want you to answer this question using one, two, or three words. First words that come to mind. Here's your question. As you look at this future version of you who's living the life of your dreams, what energy do you need to cultivate more of in your life now, today, to become that person that you're seeing in your vision? I'll ask it again. What energy do you need to cultivate more of in your life now, today, to become closer to being that person that you see in your vision? One, two, or three words. And for the next few breaths, just repeat those words or that word in your mind, however many words it is. And imagine on your inhale, you're inhaling the energy of these words. It's healing you, soothing you, covering every crevice of your inner and outer body like you're taking a shower in it on each inhale. And on the exhales, imagine you're sending that energy out to everyone who needs it. So inhale, the energy comes into you. Exhale, you're sending the energy out to everyone who needs it. And just do 3 more rounds of that on your own cycle, breathing a little bit more deeply. Inhaling what you need, bathing, soothing, healing, cleansing. Exhale, supporting, offering it out with love. One more breath. One more breath in. And when you exhale, go ahead and start to come back. And when you feel ready, open your eyes and welcome yourself back. So give you a moment to just settle with that. For some people, a lot arises. And for some people, not that much arises, which feels like a lot because you're like, not that much arose, what happened? And so I want to just tell you how powerful what we just did was. Simple, sounds simple. But every personal growth, anything that you've ever read or done, follows some version of this system. It says, here's who you are now. Here's who you want to become. There's a gap. And notice I didn't ask you, what do you need to do to fill the gap? It's who do you need to be? Who do you need to become to fill this gap? And what's happened in wellness and in mindfulness, and as we're really decolonizing our wellness and mindfulness practices these days, what's happened is we've been trained to think that we have to constantly look outside of ourselves to ask a teacher or a guru or an app or a person, hey, you out there, can you tell me what I need to be well? Can you tell me? And then we do these practices and they don't quite fit and they don't work. And then we feel like we're doing something wrong. And then we have to do another program and another thing. And we end up in this cycle. But at the same time, we're told the answers are within.
Mhm.
And so, what every single person doing this practice right now proved is that you know what you need. You know what you need.
Mhm.
And so, I don't know, Lynn, if you don't mind sharing what words might have come up for you.
Creativity was the first word that came up.
That's beautiful. And
Mhm.
so, what I tell people, and this is a very shortened version of a practice that I do in my book, But what I tell people is creativity is your word. And for you to become the highest expression of you, what you need to infuse into your life is creativity. Now, somebody else's word might be peace
Mhm.
or might be confidence. And so, if I'm guiding all of us through a meditation that's a peace meditation, is it going to be harmful? No. Is it going to sustain you, Lynn? Nope. Because what you need is creativity. And just like for me, like there's a moment in my life, like before I'm going on stage, like what I need is like power, radiance, energy. And if I not peace, you know what I mean? Relax. And so I'm not saying anything's wrong with peace. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that everybody has what's called a unique energy signature. And
Mhm.
it's the energy that you need to cultivate in your own life. And how is this activism? How is this liberation? It's because as you cultivate that in your life and you become free, you can then set others free.
Right. Right.
And so
Hmm.
that's how it
That's
works. And so,
powerful.
yeah,
Mhm.
people can use these words just like we did. I cover a lot of different ways in my book, but one of the
Mhm.
simplest ways that we just did right now, you could do it for 2 minutes. You think, what is the word that I need? And you just breathe it in 5 breaths. That's
Mhm.
a start. That's a start.
Mhm.
And if
Mhm.
you do that before a meeting, before a difficult conversation, before you go into anything, I promise you, who you show up as will be different.
Mhm.
And so that's how we change not just what we do, but the outcome of what we do by
Right.
changing who we're being.
Mhm. And it's very personal. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about how people can get engaged with your work. You have a beautiful website, the Stay
You know,
Woke, kind of the way it mirrors the book as well. All kinds of free guided practices, very interesting ones. It never occurred to me to kind of look in meditation at some of the things that you're looking at. So I was really fascinated by some of those. And you have a beautiful voice for leading meditation as well. You have
oh,
that
thank you.
safety that people can kind of settle in with. So how do
So
people what are you offering that people could get engaged with?
yeah, so there's a couple ways. So the book is called Stay Woke, a meditation guide for the rest of us, and that's everywhere. You can find it anywhere you can get a book, you can find it. And so if you search for that. And the
Mm,
second thing is if you're not ready to go into that, if you just go to my website justinmichaelwilliams.com, I have free teachings that are up every single Sunday on my blog that you don't even have to sign up for. You just can look, it's there every Sunday. We do something in my community called the Kingdom. And it's if you imagine church, Super Soul Sunday, and a TED Talk having a baby. Boop. It's that every Sunday, and it's totally free for everyone always. There's no donation bucket passed. You just come. It's our community's way of coming together. Now you are all welcome here into our community. So if you just go to my website, which is justinmichaelwilliams.com, that's justinmichaelwilliams.com, you can see all of the previous episodes of the Kingdom in the blog. And you can also just click on the Kingdom in the menu bar and join us live online one Sunday morning, depending on where you are in the world, if it's morning or not. It's at 11:11 a.m. Pacific time, so you'll have to adjust that for wherever you are. And I'm here. I think one of my biggest things is I am committed to bringing people together and to making sure that these tools are accessible. And so,
mhm,
if any of my programs you want to join, I have scholarships for every single program that I do, full scholarships for every single program that I do. If there's anything that you want to see, I have hundreds of meditations online, hundreds that are
mhm,
free for everyone. And so just use it, grow, change, and help set yourself and others free.
mhm. Yeah, that's beautiful. So one of the things that, we look a lot at is our deficiency beliefs, and I'm not good enough, I'm not enough. And so you have a song that we're gonna finish
I
this
do.
with. So why
So,
don't we move into that? But before we do that, is there anything that you wanted to kind of share, someone who needs a bit of encouragement in this, maybe someone who's kind of new? What would
yeah,
you
I think what I'd like to say ties in perfectly with this song that we're about to do together.
Mhm.
And it's this. It's that no matter how much you read, no matter how many podcasts you listen to, summits you do, how much you learn or grow, there's always going to be that child inside of each of us who just wants to know that they're enough,
Mm.
not just for what they do, but for who they are.
Mhm.
And there's this quote that I love, that it's never too late to have a good childhood. I think it's gonna be, but it's an interesting one, because what we learn is we get to show up for ourselves in
Mhm.
the way that people maybe didn't know how to show up for us. So when you come across these moments in your journey where you feel like you're not enough, where you feel like you've hit a rough patch, where you feel like you're not sure what to do, know that every single bump in the road is showing you how to find your way back to center. And you just get better at it and better at it and better at it. And what all the studies show, and this is not even woo woo, this is like, and I could be a little woo woo, but this is not woo, this is science. They've shown that when people are trying to form new habits, it doesn't take 21 days, it doesn't take 40 days, it's all a rumor. What the study shows, it takes between 18 and 254 days to make or break a new habit. Now you might be saying, wow, it's a lot of days, right? Depending on your motivation and what the habit is. For example, it's easier to make a new habit of drinking a glass of water every day than to run a mile every day, right? You can imagine.
Right. Right.
And so many of us, and I think everyone listening is in a habit formation process and a habit breaking process. And the most empowering part of the study is they found that it, for people who fall off track, because we all are going to fall off track, if you are kind and compassionate with yourself, it
Mhm.
has no long-term effect. If you fall off track, has no long-term effect on your habit formation process. But if
Ah,
you beat yourself up, it actually makes you take longer to change the habit.
yeah.
And so when you fall off track, we all fall off track. I fall off track all the time, you know? It's, how can you show up for that child? How can you show up and say, I got you. I'm doing the best I can, and let's show up again. I'm not
Mhm.
giving up on you. So anyway,
Mhm.
hopefully that's helpful for people who are on their journey. And so this
Mhm.
song is called I Am Enough. And words are, I am enough. I am golden, baby. Yeah. So what I want to invite you to do is, we imagined a future version of ourselves just a moment ago. And I want you now to imagine a childhood version of yourself. Just for a moment, we'll do this very quickly. So imagine a childhood you. You can close your eyes. And I want you to notice, is that childhood you indoor, outdoor? What color are they wearing? Is there anybody there with them? And most importantly, what did that childhood you need most in their life at that time? What did they need to hear? What did they need to know? And right now, we get to tell that child inside of each of us that they are enough, that they are worthy, and that we're not giving up on them. This is I Am Enough. Little girl, don't cry. You've been in pain enough. No. Little boy, don't hide. You've been afraid enough. One day I'll look into your eyes, show you you don't need to hide behind disguise. No. Spread your wings, you're terrified. Don't be afraid, you're born to fly. I'm by your side, yeah. I am enough. I am golden, baby. Yeah. I am enough. I am enough. That's the words, come on. enough. Oh, I am golden, baby. I am enough. I am enough. Oh, little boy, it's alright. You've taken the blame. You've taken the blame. Enough. Enough. Little girl, don't hide. You've been ashamed. Enough. One day I'll look into your eyes, show you don't need to hide behind disguise. No. Spread your wings, you're terrified. Don't be afraid, you're born to fly. I'm by your side. Here we go, say I am enough. Hey, I am golden, baby. I am enough. Try even whispering it with me for your heart. One more time, come on, together. I am enough. I am golden, baby. I am enough. I am enough. Oh, you are enough. You are golden, baby. You are enough. All right, so for the last round, I want you to put your hands over your heart, and you're gonna say, you are enough, like you're singing it to that childhood you inside of you. And you can either sing it, or you can say it, or you can whisper it, whatever works for you. Come on. You are enough. You are golden, baby. You are enough. All right, you get another shot, like you mean it. You are enough. To that child in you, say, you are enough. You are golden, baby. You are enough. Last time, we're gonna go till we are enough. We are enough. Hey, we are golden, baby. We are enough. This is our moment. We are enough. This is our time. We are enough. Oh, we are golden, baby. We are enough. All of us in the world, everybody together. We are enough. Come on. We are enough. We are golden, baby. We are enough. We are enough. Oh, we are enough. We are golden, baby. We are enough. We are enough. No. Ooh, I am enough. I am enough. All of us. You are enough. You are enough. Together. We are enough. So just feel that in your heart for a moment. Feel it reverberating through you. Like a meditation. And as you let your visions and your dreams expand, I want you to know that no matter who you are, no matter who you love, no matter how much money you have in your bank account, no matter what color your skin is, that you are enough. You are golden, baby. And I love you. So thank you so much for having me.
Oh, that
It's
was
really an
amazing.
honor. Thank
Yeah,
you.
that was incredible. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you just so much for the work that you do in the world.
Thank you for the work that you're doing, Lynn, and thank you for everybody listening. May you continue to rise and free yourself and free the world so that we can be the good ancestors that we were put here to be. I love you all so much. You're doing great work, and I can't wait to continue connecting with you all and see you somewhere else along the path. Bye for now.
Welcome to the 2021 Radical Recovery Summit, presented by the Kiloby Center for Recovery. This is Lynn Fraser, your moderator. This year, our theme is Feel It, Heal It, a new paradigm of recovery, featuring a diverse group of thought leaders and innovators, people who are working on the ground in the new field of addiction recovery. Go to radicalrecoverysummit.com to sign up and watch free.